I've been smoking cigarettes every day for years. Before you judge, let me just say that I recently started seeing a therapist for my nicotine addiction. Unfortunately, it hasn't helped much yet. The only thing worse than my addiction is my sleep schedule. I don't know what it is. I find myself staying up for hours past midnight and rarely get out of bed before noon. I am trying to fix these parts of my life, but they're extremely relevant to what I'm about to tell you. A few months ago, I was standing on my balcony, like I do most nights, smoking a cigarette. I live in a really secluded neighborhood. The houses aren't too close to each other, but there's one neighbor whose fence I can see over from my balcony. I'm not nosy or anything, but that particular night, I just happened to look over into his yard. I'd never met the guy, but I assumed he lived alone since there was only ever a navy blue BMW parked in his driveway. That night, though, there was a black van parked there that I had never seen before. I didn't think much of it, just noting the coincidence to myself. The next night, sure enough, the same black van was parked there, and I was intrigued. The following morning, I checked his driveway from my balcony, but the van was gone. For the rest of the week, I made a game out of watching the van at night, theorizing what it could be. I said I wasn't nosy, but I'll admit I can be obsessive. It's probably the main reason most of my friends have drifted out of my life. I wasn't planning to do anything beyond observing, though. It wasn't my business to poke around. But then one night, I saw something that changed my perspective completely. I was out later than usual, maybe around 5 a.m., and the van was there again like it had been every night that week. I was smoking my last cigarette when, for the first time, I saw my neighbor come outside. He walked toward the van, carrying what looked like a long, black bag. At first, I thought it may be a set of golf clubs, but it seemed to be much heavier. He opened the van's sliding door and carefully placed the bag inside. Then he got into the driver's seat and sped away. I had no idea what he was carrying, but I was exhausted and figured I would think about it more in the morning. The following night, I decided to go out onto my balcony a little earlier and wait for the van to arrive. I brought my laptop with me to get some work done while I waited. Around 10 p.m., the van still wasn't there, but finally, just before 1 a.m., it pulled into the driveway. I quickly shut my laptop and watched. Nothing happened for several minutes. The van just sat there, engine running. Then, the driver's door finally opened, and my neighbor got out. He went around to the side of the van, slid the door open, and pulled out the same black bag he'd loaded in the night before. This time, though, he was struggling, trying not to collapse under the weight of whatever was inside. I watched as he waddled a few slow steps before disappearing into his house with the bag. Something was definitely wrong, but I wasn't sure what. I flipped a coin and decided I'd follow his van the next time he left. After an unproductive day, I went up to my balcony at 4 a.m. and waited, cigarette in hand. When I saw movement in his driveway, I rushed downstairs, grabbed my keys, and got into my car. I kept my headlights off until the van pulled out onto the main road. Once it did, I started to tail it. After around 20 minutes of driving, he pulled onto a dirt path that led into the woods. I followed, thinking that the path seemed like it had once been a main road or something. The woods started thinning out, and after a few more minutes, I saw where he was headed. There was a deserted gas station tucked away in a clearing in the woods. Parked right in front of it was the navy blue BMW I always saw in his driveway. I was starting to get really nervous, so I turned my car around and parked across the street from the dirt road. I waited around an hour before I saw his BMW pull out of the clearing and head back down the path. As soon as he was gone, I drove up the dirt road and pulled over by the gas station. The place was eerie. The front door was locked, so I walked around to the side, also locked, and the back door was locked too. But I needed to know what was inside. There was a row of windows, and I tried opening them, but none would budge. Against my better judgment, I picked up a rock and slammed it into one of the windows. It shattered easily, but before I could climb inside, alarm bells started blaring. Why would an abandoned gas station have an alarm system? I sprinted back to my car, heart pounding, and sped out of there. Once I was on the road, I called 911, giving a vague description of what had happened, and then I hung up. When I woke the next morning and stepped out onto my balcony, I saw 8 police cars in my neighbor's driveway, lights flashing. I watched as an officer escorted my neighbor out of his house in handcuffs. One by one, the police cars drove away, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I lit a cigarette and stood there, trying to piece it all together. I've asked the police for details several times since then, but they've never answered any of my questions, and nothing was ever reported in the news. I even tried driving back to that gas station, but now the whole road was blocked off. Maybe one day I'll work up the courage to park my car and walk into those woods in search of answers. All right. This story happened at a gas station of all places. Middle of nowhere, dead of night, not a soul in sight. Just me and a tank that was screaming for a refill. So this was maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Still pretty fresh. I was doing an overnight run from Jersey back to the city. One of those long-ass rides that pays decent if the guy tips, which he didn't, by the way. Cheap prick. So now I'm heading home, dead tired, low on gas, and my bladder's yelling louder than an old lady playing bingo. I pull off the highway and there it is, this old flickering gas station, sitting all by itself like it's waiting to be knocked down. It had a rusty awning and those old-school pumps with flip numbers, with a sad excuse for a mini-mart attached. It looked like it hadn't had a proper customer since Reagan was in office. But the sign was lit up, and it was open. I could barely make out a guy inside behind the counter, reading a newspaper. So I pull up to the pump and turn off the engine, stepping outside. The wind was still. No bugs, no nothing. Just dead air sitting on my shoulders like wet hair. I glance around and there were no cars in any direction. I slid my card into the pump. Nothing. I tried again and it denied. The third time, it spat the card back out at me like it was allergic. So with a sigh, I rubbed my eyes and figured I had to go inside. I walked up to the counter, and the man was just staring at the newspaper, without blinking. I'm pretty sure I stood there a good minute and he never blinked once. His skin was pale, and his greasy hair was slicked back like it was the 1950s. The whole place smelled like mildew. I told him the pump wouldn't take my card, and asked if he could help. He looks up real slow, like it physically hurts to move his neck. His eyes were cloudy gray, like he'd been staring at fog his whole life, and he just stared at me. I forced a smile and repeated myself. Then he reaches real slow under the counter, and I tensed up, thinking maybe he was reaching for a weapon, but no. He pulls out a key on a plastic tag and tosses it onto the counter. "Bathroom's out back." I blinked. I didn't ask for the bathroom. He just looks at me, so I nod. "Thanks." I headed out back, now full body creeped out. I wanted to leave and just drive off, but my bladder was still bellowing. I find the bathroom, a crumbling concrete shack with a rusty steel door, and one of those motion lights that flickers like a haunted movie projector. I stick the key in, turn it, and the smell hits me like a punch in the teeth. I step inside real slow. There was one urinal and one stall, a broken mirror, and graffiti everywhere. The stall had a symbol scratched into the door, like an eye with 3 slashes through it. And beneath that, in red marker, it said, "Don't look in the mirror after midnight." I glanced down at my watch, 12:03 a.m., and I'm pissed. Not scared, pissed. I've had a long night, I'm exhausted, my back is killing me, and now I'm standing in the kill room from 7. So I rush to do my business, keeping my head down, wash my hands with soap that smells like old pennies, and just before I leave, I glance real quick at the mirror. There was a man right behind me. I spin around, and nothing. The room is empty. But I knew I saw him. He was tall, with a hat pulled down low, a long coat that touched the floor. I couldn't see his face. So I ran, dropping the bathroom key. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I sprinted right back to my car, jumping in and locking the doors. I looked at the store. The lights were still on, but there was no one behind the counter. No sign anyone had been there at all. I back out fast, tires screeching, heart pounding. I glance in the rear view and see the bathroom light, still flickering. And there was the shadow of the man. Tall, hat, coat, a silhouette in the open doorway. I peeled out of there so fast I damn near launched the bumper into the next county. I didn't stop till I hit a crowded Dunkin' Donuts 20 miles up, parked under a floodlight, and sat there shaking with a cruller in one hand and a double espresso in the other. I haven't stopped again for gas at night since. Because some gas stations, they're not serving fuel. They're collecting souls.